Hi, welcome to Creatives on Speed from Faster Ideas, where we talk to creative thinkers, doers and makers from all walks of life about their work and their inspirations. And I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Jade Coles, who's a creative strategist. Hi, Jade.
Hi, how's it going? Lovely to be here. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
very, very welcome, and really delighted to have you on. Now, I know for a fact that creative strategist doesn't really fully explain all the amazing things that you do. So why don't you sort of talk us through all the strands?
There's so many different things, but I think, essentially what I do fits into kind of three pillars, and the things that I love doing, I guess, fit into three pillars, and that's event programming strategy for mixed use hospitality spaces, art galleries and online. So I'm the person that comes in when you're like, right, I want to build an amazing co-working space with a cafe and a bar, and I want people to do like amazing and interesting things inside it. I'm the person that will help you discover what those amazing, interesting things are, what your kind of strategic event pillars are, and what that content looks like, so you can build community in that space and have everybody having a really good time. The other thing that I do loads of is like cultural partnerships. So normally what I am brought in to do is like match emerging creative talent with bigger brands to create new and exciting things. Can be anything, from advertising through to product through to new services. And then something else that I do is a lot of one-on-one coaching and mentoring, specifically for people who work in the creative arena. And I love to work with individuals who are transitioning from in-house work to going freelance and starting their own business. That's where I can be a real support to people with that phase of their life. And then sometimes I do a bit of creative project management too, depending on how I feel.
Just, in my spare time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, there's so many things there we can get into, and all like tying up with creativity, creative industries, creative
Yeah.
thinking. But let's go back. Let's go back a little to when you were growing up.
Yeah.
What part did creativity or creative activities have in your life when you were growing up?
Yeah, creativity was really important to me growing up, and I think that really stemmed from my parents and from my mum. So my mum always says that she does love arts and culture, but it was sort of, a bit of a dirty word in her house with kind of her big family. They didn't go to galleries, they didn't really like engage in, cinema and stuff like that. It was when she got a bit older, and kind of found her own feet, that she got really excited by the sort of creative industries landscape. So when she had me, she really pushed me to be in front of as much creativity as possible. She was like a forceful, pushy, kind of creative mum. My parents do not have a creative background. My family don't come from a creative background. They actually are butchers by trade. So they used to own a bunch of butchers in South London, where I was from. So that's very much kind of like their world. But my mum really loves like foreign cinema and things that are very experimental. She's just always been very curious like that. So I think she wanted to push that curiosity kind of onto me. So we always went to art galleries. We always saw the Turner Prize every year. That was a big thing for us. And really weirdly, though I'm not so into them now, kind of like musicals and like West End theatre, which I think is sort of where I get my love for sort of more experiential events, the sort of crossover with theatre and activation and kind of more normal event stuff is sort of from there. So I was really kind of pushed into it. And then I'm also an only child. So my mum was also terrified that I would be bored. So any kind of after school club in something, I was enrolled into, like, you name it, drama, tap, dance, drawing, like anything. I was really at the forefront of that. So it was really, really important to me. And it was also a way for me to kind of, I guess, grow like my own sort of like quirky personality and taste, and really find my feet and who I am. So yeah, it's been super important. And then when I started being able to think about what sixth form to go to, there is an amazing free visual arts and performing school called Brit School in Croydon, all the way down in Zone 6. And I went to the open day there, and it was like, I still remember that feeling and the energy and the excitement that I felt when I went into that school for the open day. It was incredible. It was like dancers over here, little pop-up theatre show over there, people like making costumes. There's like a technical theatre department, you know, the art department. I was literally like, my, you know, 16-year-old brain, like mind was just like completely blown. And I was like, I have to get into this sixth form. And I made an exponential amount of artwork. And I went to the interview with 2 portfolios under my arms, one just full of sketchbooks, one full of work. You know, I'd managed to get like a 35mm camera and like learn how to use it. I built a dark room in my bathroom so I could self-develop the pictures. Like, and I was the only, when I went in, I told the people running the course, Harriet, the course leader, and she was just like, whoa, like, how has this girl done all of this stuff and still like even gone and like done maths, English, science and history? I was like, yeah, I'm also excelling on all of those. Don't worry. I was like, nothing is getting in my way. The determination was unreal. And she was like, what I find amazing about you, she was like, you're the only person that's come to this interview today, not only with that volume of work that is great and really thought through, but also you didn't bring your parents with you. And I was like, of course, I'm not going to bring my parents to an interview. Like, how lame is that? And then I like walked out the door and there's everybody else there with their mum and dad on either side, like sweating for their kids and talking on behalf of their children. And I was just like, no, I've just always been a real like independent spirit like that. And then that whole experience at sixth form was just fantastic. Again, really experimental, got to work cross department. I got to go to Edinburgh Fringe Festival to help with a show when I was like 17, which is obviously great and was a, you know, again, another like mind-blowing experience for me. And yeah, just kind of ripe with opportunities and just a real quirky set of people around me, which I just loved. And then I just knew that my life had to be working around and with creative people.
Was it shortly after that that you started working in the music industry as well?
Yeah, so after that, I went and did my art foundation at Camberwell, and then I went on to do a BA. I did time-based media, which is sound, video, and performance. So I basically picked the most niche subjects of all the subjects, and there was only like 10 of us on the course, and it was like a brand new course. Yeah. But the woman that ran it, Jeanette Thomas, makes really amazing video work that I'd found really inspirational. So I wanted to go on a course that she was running. So very much like kind of led by my emotions on this one. But actually, I think performance video and sound have then lent into so much of the event work that I've done anyway, and the conceptual work that I've done, that it still feels perfect. Yeah. In my last year in that course, I was recruited by a woman called Deborah Coughlin to join what was explained to me at the time as kind of like an alternative musical WI sort of thing, Women's Institute sort of thing, in East London in a pub in Shadwell. Oh, we just meet once a week, bunch of women, get away from the guys. There's a bit of, you know, banging of drums involved, but, you know, no big deal. And I'm like, that's okay. Yeah, that's cool. But I was like, I'll do anything but sing. I was like, I don't sing and I can't read music. As I've already said, the music department at my school was not up to par. So I was like, she's like, no, there's no singing. So I go in the following Tuesday and I get upstairs. There's all these amazing women of different ages. I'm the youngest at the time in my early 20s, but there's people there right in their 30s, 40s, up to like their late 70s, right? So huge spectrum of people from like loads of different walks of life, and not just creative people, nurses, teachers, or people that are in atypical creative careers. They are all creative, obviously. And I was like, okay, great. And then, you know, everyone got together and we started singing this song called Crows that I then had to learn. And I was like, well, this is definitely singing, so I won't be coming back to this. But Deborah cornered me after and was like, so you'll be back next week. And I was like so terrified of her that I came back the following week, and, you know, for the next 10 years was essentially in this band. And in its first iteration, we were a 22-piece all-female riot girl choir. So it was an all-female choir singing over the top of like drum and bass and electro beats. So maybe if you imagine something like an MIA or a Santa Gold, but with loads, or a Bjork, I guess, on the very extreme end, like, but with loads and loads of people singing parts over the top, none of which are musically trained other than the person leading it. So very maverick. We actually managed to get signed to a record label called Transgressive, who are a very big sort of indie label. And we were signed with them for a year. We produced an album called From the Mouth of the Cave, which is a terrifying album. And it was really, really fun to make, and it's on Spotify. I was
going to say, can people go and listen to it? Yeah, I'm sure we can share some links.
Yeah, but it's still on Spotify. It got 4 out of 5 stars in The Guardian and half a star in The Enemy. So
what do they know?
It really did divide the troops. But that band then became a production company, of which I was the lead producer, sort of working very closely with Deborah. And together we created a theatre show for the Almeida Theatre, an app. We designed a pop-up shop with an events program. We just did stuff that a band would normally do, and got funding from wherever we could. So again, that's very much how I then started to earn my stripes, I guess, in this kind of more creative production, project management world. And you have to imagine then I was probably like 24, managing projects, but also trying to manage 20 other women of who were twice my age at some point. So
what an experience though.
yeah.
And what a thing to have coming to your life on a night that you maybe thought, oh, maybe I'll go to this, maybe I won't, maybe I like it, maybe I won't, and then wow, you
have to take a chance on stuff. And I think I kind of very much work in the startup sector now. And I think people always forget that bands are kind of a bit like startups. You're figuring out what your sound is, what you want to sound like. You're inspired by other things. Then you build your aesthetic, or your manager might build your aesthetic and your look. All of these things kind of play into it. It's really entrepreneurial and really exciting in that sense. And I guess I also learned then that that's the point that I really love, when you're really kind of molding it and building it and you're kind of being able to get your hands on the clay of whatever you're doing is.
Have you got any projects that you've really have been your favorites and that really stick out
over the last 10 years? Yes, there's been a few. I mean, I guess for me, I always think about what's the stuff that again, going back to that, I'm 32 now, not to date whenever somebody watches this in the future, but it's I always think about the excitement of 16-year-old Jade and the stuff that she was really determined to do. So, when I went to Edinburgh Fringe Festival when I was 17, I was like, God, I would love to do something for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, but I don't develop one person theatre shows. I'm not a comedian. So I was like, I don't really know how that's going to work. And then, 2 years ago, I was contacted by somebody who was putting on an exhibition about feminist art for Summer Hall, which is one of the spaces in Edinburgh. And they basically asked me and Deborah to create a piece of work for it. And we did. And it's a video that tries to get people to have orgasms in an art gallery. And it's tongue in cheek and it's funny. And we also did some vocal performance work around it with people at the festival. And then basically when we did the private view, we hid, people that had been in the vocal workshop pretended to be in the just hanging out of the private view. So when the video piece comes on, and it's 10 steps to doing this, and it's kind of all taking a little bit of the mick of the mindfulness movement and all the mindfulness videos that are out there on YouTube, the old 60s and 70s ones, they then start to have orgasms in the gallery as if they are reacting to the video, thus causing kind of chaos. But even more hilariously, people started copying it, so we just ended up with this sort of cacophony of
orgasm soundscape.
And we kind of ended up with this orgasm soundscape, which sounds more erotic than it actually was.
I bet it's just sort of is there video footage of any of this? I'd love to see it.
There is somewhere. It was we ran that performance twice, and the second time I think me and Deborah were a bit well, I don't think we could do that a third time. Get a little bit messy. I think things are getting a little bit heated now. Everyone's had quite a few Proseccos. So that was a great tick for 16-year-old Jade to be actually did have a bit of performance work in the Fringe. So that was amazing. I think creating the show Lysistrata for the Almeida Theatre, which was a new electronic version of the Greek play, which starred Charlotte Church, was a really big one for us. We sold that out to 250 people over 2 nights, which is great because that didn't actually even start till 9:45 p.m. So again, it was a bit of a raucous one. So that was a real achievement. And I had an art show in the ICA, which is the Institute of Contemporary Arts in central London, which had always been my favourite gallery growing up because it's, it's small, it has really progressive exhibitions and a great bar, and it's sometimes great food. So it kind of sit with everything that I enjoy doing. And we did something for Fig 2, which was programmed by a curator called Fatos Ustek, who has since gone on to be kind of the main curator for things like the Liverpool Biennale. So again, Jade, who was doing her fine art BA, actually being able to get a exhibition essentially into one of her favourite galleries was a really big tick. And then, nowadays it's more, I guess I'm always proud when, to your point earlier, I'm able to kind of shift and learn in new spaces. And I'm a big fan of like reflection. And as I mentor people at the moment, I'm always like, please spend some time like reflecting on what you actually got done in the last quarter, or what you got done over the last year, because you'll probably end up really surprising yourself. And this year, for the first time, I've ended up working on a fully digital product with one of my clients. Well, in fact, two of them, BBC Maestro and Creative Entrepreneurs, of fully digital products. So I'm suddenly a tech bro, which I never thought I was going to be. I thought I was always going to be, you know, a kind of hotel co-working, co-living, you know, person that's in very much in a space and inspired by being in spaces. And now suddenly I'm working in the fully digital space. And I was having conversations with someone yesterday about, you know, how they'd like to see me move into like product development. And I'm like, whoa, I don't really even know anything about that. But now I'm really excited about the proposition, because suddenly you're like, oh, actually, these things do translate.
Yeah, totally. And my next question was going to be, where do you go for your creative inspiration? But, you know, there's so many projects that just sort of you must be drawing from all the time. Is there anything you do like privately, separately to sort of the project work you do?
Yeah, to inspire me. Yeah, like, so I think what's interesting is like, it takes a bit of time, but over time you start to see that you have a kind of pattern or style or aesthetic. I'm not an art director, but like when you start to look back at those projects, you start to see the things that you're inspired by and what kind of repeats itself and what the kind of pattern is. I get a lot of inspiration from people. I think that's why I loved being in the band with so many people. I love people's different stories, different points of view. I'm like very open to that. So anything that involves me being able to connect with other individuals to create something always works really nicely for me. I'm also fascinated by the mundane, which I know by proxy sounds really boring, but it's one of my favorite sort of projects for myself over lockdown, is that when I go on my walks around South London and beyond, if I see any kind of weird compositions of kind of rubbish or juxtaposed sort of like materials that are in the urban environment, I take a picture of them and then I put a kind of fake like artistic analysis about them.
I love that
on my Instagram. That's kind of tongue in cheek, but it's kind of like, you see so many, when you suddenly put your lens on it, you see these weird juxtapositions of things, and you're like, oh, that's just really, really fun and interesting. So I often have moments of taking pictures of loads of things that are a certain color or things that fit in a certain pattern, and I'll do that for a while and then it will suddenly disappear. So it's just interesting to see how your brain works. But I think the other thing for me that's important in that is the walking. Like, I love walking around, and I love walking around London, especially when it's bustling in its usual state, because it's changing all the time. And I did an event with this creativity expert who I'm sure you've heard of, called Kathy Haynes. She's got a PhD in creativity, and she talks about the fact that, you know, in order to keep your brain kind of creatively agile, you should avoid too much structure. And obviously, as humans, we all need structure. We've all got deadlines and dependence and things that we need to do, absolutely. But you know, it's about, if you're going to walk to the park, why don't you go left instead of right when you walk there? If you always love walking to Vauxhall, why don't instead you decide to walk to Waterloo and see what you see what you hear, what do you enjoy, like enjoy the kind of sensorial nature of that kind of block. I find it's normally because there's too much going on in my head, even without me, like on a subconscious level. So it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm worried about this, and I know I'm worried about that, and I know I've got to water the plants, and actually I've got to make that phone call. It's more like subconsciously there's just probably some thoughts that are peppering around that need to sort of come out. So journaling is really good for that. I'm sure lots of people that listen to this will have heard of things like the artist's way, and they talk about it a lot in that, getting up and the first thing that you do is write everything that's down, like literally whatever's in your head, you write it down. I'm not a morning person, so that is not a task for me. My morning tasks are just like get to coffee and turn the heating on, and like that's it. So, but later on, or if I'm feeling a bit stuck, then I'll just write. And I'll just write endlessly what is ever in my head. And that is a real like clear path. And then another thing that I like to do if I'm not able to click into a brief or quite get into a project is that I try and write down the opposite of everything that it is. So instead of trying to think about what it is, and it's like, that can be kind of all encompassing and a bit confusing, I'm like, okay, let's start with what it's not. and then see what we're left with after. And that is sometimes quite a good circuit breaker, I guess, for me.
Yeah. So talk to us more about the coaching and how you sort of got into that, and how you're finding it as well, because it's a really interesting side of what you do, I think.
Yeah, so I think for me, like what I realized, especially this year, or when I was starting to think about this year at the end of last year, is that I've been really trying to like kind of align my like value center to the work that I do, which I think is something a lot of freelancers have been doing. And then I got the opportunity to do some work with a great new company called I Like Networking, which is ran by this woman, Isabel Sachs. She started it during lockdown in order to support people that were being made redundant, or, you know, people that were having any kind of transiency in their creative industries career. And I became a mentor for her, and I did loads of speed mentoring with people that work in the events industry. And then I took on some one-on-one mentorships. And off the back of that, I was asked to do some stuff with the students at Lincoln University. So it kind of snowballed from there. And I was like, I would do these one-on-one sessions. And when I closed the laptop at the end of the 60 minutes, the really lovely, like internal glow feeling that I got was like very like long lasting. So I think when I am working with a client and I like win a pitch, you get that adrenaline rush and it's a real big high, and then you kind of like decompress again. If I'm working on an events program and the events are happening and people are there, big adrenaline rush and then a big crash. That's how it works. And that's why people are addicted to the events industry and other industries that have that system, because you're always trying to get that buzz. But the feeling that I get when I coach someone one-on-one isn't that super high adrenaline feeling, but it's this nice, you know, base even level of warmth that kind of lasts a lot longer in a lot of ways. And I was like, okay, like let me feel my feelings here. That's something that I should do more of because it makes me feel great. I get really good feedback about it, and I think I'm helping people on an individual level. So yeah, I guess it's about capturing who I can capture on a macro level through bigger projects and ideas, and then who I can support individually. And, you know, and I think absolutely, especially for kind of like women and like people of color, there are less like mentorship schemes or specific kind of mentor or like coach schemes, or if you're from a lower socioeconomic background, like there aren't so many places to be like, to show that you can just be a totally normal person and make a career in the creative industries, basically. And that's actually a lot of the feedback that I've got from some of the like events and sessions, is that, you know, because I've been, you know, really hardline and said that, you know, like I'm like a super normal person from a super normal family. I had to sell into them that I was going to do art as a career. They didn't get how I was going to make money. I had to, you know, do the work to prove to them that the industry that I sit in is viable and exciting, and it was completely worth it. And that's the stuff from students that we always get really good feedback about. They're like, thank you so much for saying that, because sometimes I feel like I'm the only one that's in this, and I feel like a kind of square peg in a round hole. So I guess I'm always trying to explain to people that maybe you feel like that, and sometimes I feel like that, but actually like hundreds of us feel like that, so we're probably a bit more in the majority than you think.
If people want to find you, either for mentoring, coaching, or any of your other projects, where can they find you?
Yeah, so feel free to drop me an email. I'm on jade@jadecoles.com. Very easy to remember email address if you've got my name written anywhere on this. And then my Instagram handles are jadecoles_ and studio.coles. If you find one, you'll inevitably find the other. And everything else I think you can probably find from that, more or less. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on all of the places other than Twitter.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Jade. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.